Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Friday, January 13th, 2023. And our top story this morning, the cost of living crisis and sustainable climate action tops the global risks for 2023. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Bob Colley is the principal and founder of Colley ESG. Bob, Happy New Year. Great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us in the program this morning.
Happy New Year to you too, Jeff. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be a new year without talking about climate change, climate action, sustainable investing. And I want to start with a conversation. Obviously, you didn't author the report from the World Economic Forum, which basically says that cost of living crisis, now number one, climate action, number two. But I wanted to ask your reaction to this. I don't want to say the deprioritization, the lowering of the priority of climate action by World Economic Forum and its partners.
Exactly. I think that shows the nature of the investment world in the short term. Things come up which are crises right now, and clearly the cost of living crisis is a huge deal, as is the war in Ukraine as well. So there are definitely short-term factors which are huge economic influences in the short term. But as the old saying goes, there's things that are kind of important and urgent, and not, there's only so much overlap between them. And I think these things are critically important in the short term, but the longer out you look, the more these long-term trends start to become more and more important and start to dominate. So it shouldn't surprise us that in the short term, crises are going to arise, and climate's not always going to be the single most pressing thing that we have to do today. But certainly the longer term horizon that you want to look at, the more it becomes, this is something that we cannot afford to ignore. So whatever else we're dealing with, unfortunately, climate issues and other issues around nature, and ensuring that the environment is properly looked after, they'll always be there as well.
Well, it's always possible to walk and chew gum, although sometimes I struggle with doing that. But yeah. Organizations, governments, they can do more than one thing, Bob, and that's certainly, I guess, true here in the short run. As you said, there's inflation around the world. It's hard to buy things, but
it is.
Go ahead.
But you raise the political issues, and unfortunately, politics is very, very much a short-term game, and they're going to try to fix the short-term issues in front of them. And perhaps it falls on other organizations, other institutions, to take the long-term view. Investors probably have a longer-term view than politicians do on some of these issues. So I think we all have a responsibility to think about the long-term as well as the short-term, and the politicians aren't necessarily always going to be able to do that because of the pressures that they're under.
Yeah, it's always about getting the next votes in the next election.
Yeah.
Bob, but if you look at, rather than define it as sustainable investing, if you define it as ESG, isn't cost of living doesn't that kind of fall under that sphere of ESG, right? You've got environmental, you've got social, and then you've got governance. And to me, again, I'm not the expert, but it would fall under that definition.
It definitely does, because where you have cost of living pressures, the vulnerable parts of society are the ones who are disproportionately affected. Casual labor, a lot of people will be living day to day, and it's an economic crisis which is perhaps inconvenient for those of us who are better off. Is much more than simply inconvenient for people that are not as fortunate. And so I think, yes, these issues all ultimately interact, and to take the big picture view of what's happening, you can never completely separate the different issues that we're dealing with, and a good investor is trying to kind of balance as many of these things as they can. But as soon as the conversation becomes about one topic only to the exclusion of all else, that's not necessarily a good thing, because there are always other issues that are relevant to a decision.
And yeah, I mean, that's by the way, that's kind of what the media does sometimes, right? They always hone in on an issue because it'll get eyeballs. But you're right. I mean, life goes on for the rest of us, and we have to kind of focus on these issues. Last question, Bob, before we transition to a commercial break, and that's, does this lowering of a priority give companies that maybe were on the fence about disclosure, data, does it give them kind of an out to say, hey, that's not as much of a priority? I'm just trying to think about those board meetings that you and I have sat in. You're sitting in them more than I am now. But does it give them to say, okay, maybe we don't focus on the data part and disclosure part. We got to focus on helping our employees and helping our customers with cost of living. What can we do?
It doesn't give them a legitimate out, but in practice, some people will use this as a reason to avoid difficult decisions. It's the classic whataboutery. It's, well, I'm not going to worry about this because there's something over here that can serve as a distraction from it. And companies that are genuinely trying to run a good business for the long term, as opposed to just trying to bump up this quarter's profits or this year's profits, are going to, as you say, try to do two things at once, and it's not necessarily easy to do. So I think it is the case that some companies will try to use this as an out from some of the environmental and climate issues that they should be looking at, but I don't think it's justified to do that.
Yeah, really good point. Really good point. I like to take the other side of the contrarian point of view every once in a while, and when I saw this, I'm like, okay, well, it's deprioritizing, and maybe people are kind of rethinking around the table what they're going to do. Bob, I want to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the headwinds facing ESG and sustainable investments. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
Well, Bob, thanks so much for staying with us this morning. Really happy to have you stick around for segment number 2.
No, it's always enjoyable to talk to you, Jeff. So
it's really great to get your insight, and that's why I love doing these programs. Bob, let's talk about maybe the year in review for sustainable investing, and I just want to tee it up by saying you and I have talked about markets in general, and the way markets work is they're really imperfect. You try for perfection, but you don't get perfection, and there are winners, less winners, and there are losers. But how did sustainable investing do broadly in 2023 or 2022, not 2023?
I would say the underlying trend remains that this is something that's getting into the mainstream. It's something that people are starting to understand better. But obviously, in terms of simple performance numbers over 22, you have, because oil rallied and the fossil fuels did well. I think if you looked at the performance numbers, this would have been one of the down years, which every strategy has. So I think that it's a mixed picture, but the overall trend is one that of this sector that it's not that is it doing well or doing badly. It's more a question of it's maturing. It's starting to become something which is, people understand what it is, and it's finding its place within the whole kind of investment ecosystem, for good and bad. Some people will choose to follow these strategies, and other people will understand what it is and say, actually, it's not for them. So I think there's just a lot of things going on, but in a single word, I would say it's a question of the industry maturing.
Yeah, and Bob, let's not talk about the political aspect of this, because there's always, as you said in segment 1, there's always that short-termism of political gain. But let's talk about things that happen in the imperfections of the market, which are things like greenwashing, or maybe if you want to define it as fraud or not being truthful. I don't know how, we're not going to spin it. It's just not following what you said you're going to do. That has kind of reared its head here. And by the way, it happens in other segments of the market too. And I want to get your thoughts on that, because there have been things that have kind of, beyond the headwinds in terms of performance, there have been things that people will say, negative, that's a negative on this particular investment stream.
It is, and I think that's part of this maturing process that I was talking about. So it was, and it's probably a good thing in that if ESG is this kind of super hot area that's kind of everybody's interested in for good reasons and bad, and it's you can't afford not to be in this, then the people that are just doing this because they think, well, I can launch a product that I charge a premium price for because this is a hot area. You don't actually want that to be happening. That's not good for investors, and it's not serving this wider social purpose of actually managing the impact that we're having as investors either. So it's a lose-lose if people are trying to create ESG products purely out of this kind of response to perceived demand. So I think if there's a little bit of shakeout within the industry, that's a good thing. Now, unfortunately, the process of shaking out involves realizing that some people are perhaps going into this without the right motives, or they may be well-intentioned and just not have actually been doing everything that they were intending to do. And it's probably, both of the above have happened. So it's a very messy business. And unfortunately, we're going to get, the more people that are doing something, the more some of them are going to be doing it in the right way, and some of them are going to be doing it in the wrong way. So I don't want to make it sound like there's a lot of greenwashing going on and so on. I think by and large the industry is engaging with the longer term issues that it has. It's right that we're looking for greenwashing and trying to call it out wherever we see it, but it's not the dominant thing within the industry. That's not the main thing that's happening. There are good products being developed, good products that are available by firms that know what they're doing. So it's a mixed story. It's not all bad news.
Yeah, and we have the habit of, going back to our conversation about the media, of tainting everyone with a very broad brush. You look recently at FTX, you look at Madoff, but there are a lot of really good cryptocurrency investors or people that manage crypto. There were a lot of good investment managers back in 2008 that weren't wrapped up in this. So you can't paint with a broad brush. All right, Bob, I'm not gonna put you on the spot, but I want to ask you, what can we expect? What are things that you're looking at on behalf of your clients for 2023? Here we are, January 13th. I'm not a superstitious guy, but it's January 13th, Friday the 13th. So I just want to ask you, what are you looking at for 2023? What should we be thinking about when it comes to sustainable investing?
I think the big thing that we could expect to move forward this year is better data to work with. There's a lot of initiatives around the world where companies are having to report more and more. And once you have information that you're working with, the analytics will follow, and you can start to do better analysis, and we can start to, so all of the products that we're talking about, you're actually working on cleaner data from companies, you're working on more consistent data from companies. So I think the more that you have meaningful numbers that you can work with, the more that this industry is going to be something that's building what we as investors want, and the analysis will be better, because at the moment it is still, you're trying to interpret data as best you can, which creates massive opportunities, incidentally, for the people that are able to interpret the data well. But overall, it's a good thing for the industry if data improves, if consistency improves, and if reporting standards improve.
Yeah, well, we're going to see what happens. I mean, this is certainly, I think, Europe continues to be ahead of the U.S. I think there have been some more regulatory changes, but the fund flows look really great in Europe. U.S., we're a little behind. We're gonna see how that all kind of plays out. Bob Colley, always a great event talking with you. Really appreciate having you on the program, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks as always, Jeff. Speak soon.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest security news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, or visit our website and our over 300 streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.